In the flickering candlelight of a 14th century cottage, a trembling bride, barely past childhood, faces a husband twice her age, his calloused hands reaching for her amidst the stench of wet wool and unwashed flesh. This was no tender union, but a transaction sealed by blood and witnessed by a raucous crowd, their crude shouts piercing the thin walls. What twisted rituals governed these intimate moments, where love was a sin and pleasure a path to damnation? Beneath the weight of superstition and religious terror, a darker truth emerges, one that reveals the medieval bedroom as a battlefield of power, fear, and forbidden desire. A story long shrouded in shadow awaits its unveiling, exposing the strange, unsettling customs that shaped human intimacy in an age of unrelenting control. In the autumn of 1347, as the Black Death loomed on Europe's horizon, the medieval world clung to a fragile order dictated by faith, fear, and survival. Within the stone walls of villages and manors, intimacy was not a private affair, but a public spectacle, governed by a labyrinth of ecclesiastical decrees and ancient superstitions. The marriage bed, far from a sanctuary of affection, served as a stage where community, church, and primal instinct collided. Here, the most personal acts were scrutinized, regulated, and laden with the weight of eternal salvation or damnation. From the rigid doctrines of theologians like Thomas Aquinas to the whispered herb lore of village-wise women, every touch was shadowed by the spectre of sin or the promise of survival. This is the tale of a world where desire was both a necessity and a peril, where the intimate became political, and where the human heart wrestled with forces far beyond the candlelit chamber. A journey into this shadowed past reveals not merely bizarre customs, but the raw, unyielding struggle of humanity to navigate love and lust within the iron grip of medieval control. In the shadowed heart of a 14th century village, the marriage bed served not as a private haven, but as a public stage where honor, lineage, and communal approval were fiercely negotiated. A young bride like Margot, clad in a simple woolen shift, crafted by her mother's careful hands, entered a ritual shaped by tradition rather than tenderness. Her husband, Henrik, a man seasoned by labor and chosen for his modest wealth, 3 pigs and a half-acre of barley, stood beside her in a union forged for alliance, not affection. The bedding ceremony, a custom as rooted as the feudal order, turned the wedding night into a communal event. Boisterous guests, their voices lively with ale, escorted the couple to their chamber amid traditional songs and jests. Beyond the thin walls, the crowd lingered, their clamor a testament to the ritual's significance, awaiting confirmation that the marriage had been sealed. The display of sheets, a symbol of the bride's virtue, affirmed the union's legitimacy in the eyes of the community. Failure to meet these expectations could invite shame or rejection, prompting some to employ clever means, like subtle marks, to satisfy tradition. In this flickering candlelight, intimacy was woven into a public performance, where every act carried the weight of societal judgment. The medieval bedroom, far from a sanctuary, was a stage where bodies became emblems in a broader contest of power and survival, governed by rules as unyielding as the stone walls around them. Yet this ritual was but the opening act in a larger drama of obligation and constraint. In the medieval world, the Catholic Church loomed as an unyielding arbiter over the most intimate corners of human existence, casting the marriage bed in a pall of divine scrutiny. Every touch, every whispered moment, was weighed against the threat of eternal damnation. Theologians, wielding authority from ancient texts, decreed that even lawful unions could teeter on the precipice of sin. Saint Jerome, in the 4th century, had proclaimed that to love one's spouse too ardently was to commit adultery against God, a sentiment echoed centuries later by Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica of 1265. His rigid prescriptions confined intercourse to a narrow path. Only the missionary position, man above, woman beneath, face to face, was deemed natural and pleasing to the Almighty. Any deviation, from oral pleasures to rear entry, was branded a crime against nature, a sure path to hellfire. The Church's calendar further constricted desire, forbidding copulation during Lent, on holy days, or during menstruation, pregnancy, or breastfeeding, leaving a scant 50 days each year for permissible intimacy. For a young bride like Margot, these were not abstract doctrines, but a crushing reality, imparted through her mother's hushed warnings and reinforced by the village priest's probing questions in the confessional. To yield to her husband's demands on a forbidden Wednesday risked her soul's salvation. To refuse invited his wrath, sanctioned by a society that saw wives as property. Domestic violence, far from a crime, was an expected recourse for a husband's authority. The bedroom, thus, became a crucible where spiritual purity clashed with earthly demands, each act shadowed by the spectre of divine retribution. Women bore the weight of this paradox, their bodies subject to rules that stripped away autonomy and turned desire into a perilous negotiation. The Church's decrees, etched in the minds of the faithful, transformed the most private moments into a battleground of the soul, where every choice carried the chill of eternal consequence. Yet, this was but a glimpse of the era's deeper distortions of the human form. In the medieval mind, steeped in the ancient wisdom of Greeks and Romans, the female body was an enigma, cloaked in ignorance and fear. Medical texts, revered in the universities of Paris and Bologna, proclaimed women as defective men, their anatomy a flawed inversion of the male form. The vagina was deemed an inside-out penis, the ovaries mere internal testicles, a doctrine that shaped not only science, but the very perception of womanhood. Physicians like Constantine the African, writing in the 11th century, asserted that female conception required prolonged stimulation and multiple climaxes, a belief that birthed a sinister legal fiction. Rape could not lead to pregnancy, for without pleasure, the womb would not open. Thus, a woman pregnant from assault faced not only trauma, but accusation, her body's betrayal twisted into evidence of complicity in medieval courts. Stranger still was the notion of the wandering womb, a malady feared to drive women to hysteria or death. Learned men believed the uterus could drift within the body, strangling the heart or seeking escape through the vagina. Treatments were as bizarre as the diagnosis. Sweet herbs were burned to fumigate the vagina, luring the womb back to its place, while foul-smelling concoctions were applied to the nose to repel it downward. These practices, codified in medical treatises, were no mere curiosities, but a framework that rendered women's bodies both dangerous and defective. For a bride like Margot, such beliefs were a constant shadow, her desires and pains misunderstood by a world that saw her as lesser. Her mother's whispered warnings carried not only the Church's moral weight, but the era's warped science, which pathologized her very nature. The female form far from celebrated, was a source of dread, its mysteries weaponized to justify control and blame. This distorted lens not only shaped medical practice, but wove a tapestry of fear that ensnared women in a web of suspicion and shame. Yet within this oppressive framework, a hidden world of resistance quietly flourished. Beyond the Church's austere decrees, a clandestine world of folk wisdom thrived, whispering secrets of fertility and survival in the shadows of medieval villages. Wise women, branded witches by later generations, preserved a fragile thread of pagan knowledge, defying the clergy's efforts to erase it. Under the silver glow of a full moon, women ventured into the forests, gathering pennyroyal and tansy to brew teas that could prevent conception, though the line between remedy and poison was perilously thin. A misjudged dose could bring death as swiftly as it promised liberation. Mandrake roots, their human-like forms prized as fertility talismans, were worn against the skin to coax a child into being. Their scarcity fueled a trade in counterfeit roots, carved from briar, peddled in bustling markets. A woman might kneel before St. Margaret's shrine, praying for safe childbirth, while secretly burying afterbirth beneath her threshold to secure future fertility, or tucking amber between her breasts to ward off miscarriage. These acts, blending devotion with defiance, were a desperate bid to control the body in a world where childbirth claimed 1 in 3 women. Contraception, when attempted, was a gamble with fate. Some leapt backwards 7 times after intercourse, others sipped wine laced with ground bees or swallowed toxic brews of mercury and lead, often at the cost of their lives. For unmarried women, pregnancy spelt ruin, exile, disgrace, or execution, making infanticide a grim last resort, silently understood, yet condemned. These practices, denounced as witchcraft by the Church, were born of necessity, not malice, in a society that offered women little agency. The wise women's law, passed down in hushed tones, was a quiet rebellion against the iron grip of doctrine, a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be wholly subdued. Yet, the risks of such defiance were as grave as the consequences of submission, casting a long shadow over every choice. This secret knowledge, though powerful, was but one thread in the intricate web of control that bound the medieval body. In the medieval world, a woman's virginity was no private virtue, but a commodity, traded like coin between families to cement alliances and uphold honor. For a bride like Margot, her chastity was her father's most valuable offering, worth more than gold or livestock in the marriage negotiations that bound her to Henrik. The wedding night, far from a moment of intimacy, was a public trial, its outcome displayed in the bloodied sheets, waved before a clamorous crowd. These stains were not merely proof of consummation, but a seal of familial reputation, their absence a catastrophe that could see the bride returned in disgrace, branded a deceiver, or even sentenced to death. Yet medieval medicine, mired in error, misunderstood the hymen as a solid barrier, torn only by intercourse, when in truth it could be broken by labor, riding, or natural variation. This ignorance fueled a culture of relentless suspicion, driving some women to desperate measures, pricking fingers or smuggling chicken blood to fake the expected evidence. Church courts, tasked with ensuring a marriage's legitimacy, turned private moments into legal spectacles, interrogating couples about their wedding night and inspecting the bride's body for signs of penetration. Neighbors, too, were summoned to testify about sounds heard through thin walls, stripping away any veneer of privacy. The Church's obsession with consummation created a paradox. A marriage was not binding until completed, yet every act was fraught with moral peril, governed by rules that condemned deviation as sin. For women, virginity was both a shield and a shackle, its loss a transaction that transferred ownership from father to husband. The bedroom, thus, became a crucible where bodies were bartered, and honor was won or lost in a single night's act. This relentless scrutiny of purity was not merely a social custom, but a mechanism of control, binding women to a system that valued their bodies above their will. Yet, even within this suffocating framework, whispers of rebellion stirred in the shadows. Despite the Church's unyielding dominion over the medieval soul, a clandestine current of rebellion pulsed through the shadows, defying the rigid strictures that bound desire. In the flickering glow of tavern hearths, the bawdy tales of the French fabliaux, sung by wandering minstrels, wove stories of forbidden positions and illicit pleasures that would have scandalized the clergy. These ribald narratives, shared in market squares and alehouses, hinted at a world where couples dared to explore beyond the Church's sanctioned missionary pose, risking their souls for a fleeting taste of ecstasy. Among the nobility, Andreas Capellanus, writing in the 12th century, penned treatises on courtship that celebrated a sophisticated sensuality, detailing techniques and rituals that mocked ecclesiastical bans. The tradition of courtly love, born in the lyrical verses of troubadours, elevated unfulfilled desire to a spiritual quest, casting marital intercourse as a mere duty, while romantic yearning burned brightly outside its confines. In villages, festivals like May Day offered a fleeting escape from surveillance, as young people slipped into the forests under the guise of gathering flowers. These nocturnal trysts, veiled by the revelry of spring, led to a surge of February births, silent proof of defiance against communal control. Such acts, though perilous, carried the weight of excommunication, or worse, yet they revealed an unquenchable human spirit, seeking pleasure amidst the threat of divine retribution. Even the Church's tales of succubi and incubi, demons believed to seduce the unwary, could not wholly suppress this undercurrent of rebellion, though they cast a pall of fear over every intimate act. These stories of forbidden desire, whispered in defiance of doctrine, were a testament to the resilience of human longing, flourishing in the cracks of an oppressive system. The medieval heart, though bound by fear and law, found ways to assert its own truths, carving out moments of intimacy in a world determined to deny them. Yet this defiance was not without its own terrors, as the era's darkest fears took monstrous form. In the medieval imagination, the bedroom was a perilous frontier where demons lurked, ready to prey on the vulnerable in their most intimate moments. The Church taught that succubi and incubi, malevolent spirits cloaked in human form, seduced men and women, draining their life force through forbidden congress. These were no mere folk tales, but theological truths, woven into medical and ecclesiastical doctrine. A succubus might steal a man's seed in the night, transforming into an incubus to impregnate a woman with cursed offspring, their children deemed demonic by a fearful society. Sleep paralysis, now understood as a neurological quirk, was interpreted as a demonic assault, its victims waking frozen, oppressed by an unseen weight, and often accused of consorting with witches. Such accusations could lead to exorcisms or the stake. The line between victim and sorceress terrifyingly thin. Menstruation, too, was shrouded in dread. Its blood deemed a poison capable of blighting crops, souring wine, or sapping male virility. Women in their monthly cycle were banished to huts beyond the village, barred from churches or touching sacred objects, their bodies branded as pollutants. Medieval physicians, clinging to ancient texts like those of Pliny the Elder, prescribed perilous remedies, bloodletting or intercourse, to purge the supposed toxins of menstrual blood, believing male seed could neutralize its danger. Yet, in the shadows of this fear, women cultivated secret knowledge, using moss, rags, or lunar-tract herbs to manage their cycles, hidden from the prying eyes of priests and doctors who might condemn such acts as witchcraft. These practices, born of necessity, were a quiet defiance against a world that pathologized the female form. The medieval bedroom, thus, was a crucible of terror, where natural processes were twisted into sources of shame and supernatural dread. Every act, from a woman's cycle to a nocturnal dream, carried the weight of divine judgment, ensnaring the human body in a web of fear and superstition. Yet, even in this haunted landscape, the human spirit sought to carve out spaces for survival and resistance. Should the shadowed truths of history stir the mind, a simple gesture of appreciation, be it a like or a subscription, ensures that tales such as these continue to unravel the past's hidden corners. Those moved to share their place in this global tapestry, where voices from distant lands converge, may leave a comment, weaving their own thread into the chronicle of human curiosity. Together, these acts forge a silent pact, binding those who seek to uncover the strange and solemn realities that shape the lives of those long gone. As the candlelight flickers across Margot's trembling form, her story unveils a world where intimacy was a crucible of power, fear, and relentless control. The medieval bedroom, far from a haven, was a battleground where the human spirit wrestled with the iron dictates of church, community, and superstition. Every act, be it a bride's submission, a whispered herb law, or a defiant tryst, bore the weight of eternal judgment. Yet within this oppressive tapestry, the pulse of human desire endured. Women like Margot, bound by doctrine and dread, found fleeting moments of agency, their secret rebellions a testament to an unyielding will to survive. The bizarre customs of this era, bloodied sheets, demonic fears, toxic remedies, reveal not mere ignorance, but a profound struggle to navigate the eternal tension between body and soul, desire and duty. These practices, alien to modern sensibilities, mirror the timeless forces of power and shame that continue to shape human intimacy. The medieval world teaches that sexuality is never merely personal, but a reflection of the structures that govern it, a dance of defiance and submission played out in the shadowed corners of history. As Margot's hand meets Henrik's in that smoky cottage, their fleeting touch encapsulates a civilization's anxieties, its longing for connection against impossible odds. Their story, though centuries distant, whispers a solemn truth. The quest for authentic intimacy, fraught with peril, is an ancient aspiration, as enduring as the human heart itself.